my fear was that I was going to embarrass the family, and some housewife from Des Moines was going to get up there and just clean my clock, you know, and so the first puzzle comes, and this woman, she went right through it, and I went, oh gosh, here it comes, and long story short, I end up going to the bonus round. I win the first round, went to the bonus round. I'm playing for a $48,000 Shelby Cobra sports car. I am 18 years old. And so they got this sports car sitting right there, and then they have the puzzle, you know, and it comes up behind it. And back then, it was, you know, we've really dumbed down society. Back then, they didn't give you the letters, you know. You had to pick your R, S, T, L, N, and your vowel, and E. If you've got a pen, you can write this down, but I'm gonna be quick. It was a person, all right, and the letters were blank blank N, R blank T blank ER, all right. I knew it. I knew it like that. I saw myself driving around the University of Alabama campus in this $48,000 Shelby Cobra. And I'm not the best looking guy in the world. I need something like that to attract the chicks. And I'm thinking, here I go, man. This is just awesome. So the only problem was Vanna was up there in this backless red jumpsuit. I'm 18 years old, all right? I'm a little nervous. I got the flu working on me, and I just, anyway, so I said it, I just knew it. Blank, blank, N, R, blank, T, blank, E, R. It's a person. I went, John Ritter. This was 1983. John Ritter had 4 letters in his first name, and it wasn't the right answer, so now I'm panicked. Right? And what makes it worse is my mom and my dad and my little sister are over here in the wings. If you watch the show, when the guy gets the puzzle, everybody in the wings gets to come on and dance with you. Well, my sister was so excited to be on national television, she just, you know, and so I got it wrong, and now she's just, and so I blew it, and Pat Sajak's there looking at me like, you knucklehead. And the answer was, somebody said it, Dan Rather. I have never liked Dan Rather. Didn't like him back then. He cost me a car. I've never liked him since then. And, well, see, that was only part of it. So the good news was after the show, I didn't win the big money, but we went to Hawaii afterwards, which was kind of the consolation prize. But did I tell you I had the flu? I'm at the top floor of the hotel just watching everybody have fun. It was miserable. All right, but here's the rest of the story. This is not at all what I wanted to talk about, but I'm going to go with it. 10 years later, I was working in Austin, Texas, and Wheel of Fortune was coming to the Texas State Fair. So I convinced my news director that it would be a great idea if I could be reunited with my good buddies Pat and Vanna. I mean, I went to the bonus round. Hello, of course they remembered me, and so my news director thinks it's a good idea, and so they send me and a photographer up to Dallas and where the Texas State Fair was, and it's in a place kind of like this. It was a luncheon for all the media types, and Pat and Vanna were going to be there. So I'm sitting at a round table just like that with all these other media guys, and here comes Pat and Vanna. They walk in the door. And I said, y'all, excuse me, I'm going to go introduce myself to Pat and Vanna. I'm going to do a story with them tomorrow. Just tell them what we're doing. So I pick up my napkin and say, y'all, blow my nose. I get up and I walk over to them. Well, I reach my hand out to Pat, blows me off. I mean, just not even it just went right past me. But Vanna White stopped in her tracks and could not take her eyes off me. Oh, dear. I'm just saying, right? I go, hey, Vanna, how you doing? I'm Matt Mosler. I'm in Austin, Texas. I'm going to do this story, but and she's just, she's not looking left. She's not looking right. She is looking right through me. And I'm telling her we're going to do this story, and I was on the, it's bonus round, and I'm telling her the whole thing, and she is just, and it got to be a little uncomfortable. I mean, I realize I'm cute and everything, but, I was married by now, and so finally I said, well, okay, I'll just see you tomorrow, Van. Okay, and I said, go back and sit down at the table. Well, I get down at the table, and I said, guys, it was the weirdest thing. I'm sitting there, I'm white, and telling her the story. She's not taking her eyes off me. It was just really weird. And this guy sitting right on the other end of the table looked at me right in the eye, and he went, Now, for those of you who don't speak sign language, that means you didn't get it all right? And if you're still having a little trouble, that meant I had a boogie right there. They had no idea who I was when I first introduced myself, but I guarantee you they know who I am now. So that's you gotta enjoy life, man. Life's about the stories you tell. So that was just fun. Again, I appreciate the opportunity to be here, and I'm not going to talk too quickly because, as Greg mentioned, I get up really early in the morning. I get up at 2:50 in the morning, and I get to work early, and I do the morning show on Channel 4, and I'm there from 4 o'clock until 8 o'clock, and then I get home and we do the ministry thing full time. But I am really tired, so I don't know what I'm going to say, which is, I'm glad they got the recorder here so they can hold everything against me. Thank you. Usually when you do these sorts of talks, right, you're supposed to give a little bit of motivation. You're supposed to fire people up. You know, we're at this wonderful chamber bank, and we got to have the best year we've possibly had. And, of course, it all comes back to the speaker at the banquet the year before. And so you come up with, these inspirational stories about people like Oprah, about people like Michael Jordan, about even people like Sam Walton, these guys that overcame adversity, and they succeeded despite all the obstacles in front of them. But most of you guys know those stories. So I'm going to tell you a story about somebody that you probably have never heard of. It's my Uncle Jim. Have y'all ever heard of my Uncle Jim? All right, my Uncle Jim. Now, my Uncle Jim was one of my favorite uncles. He was married to my Aunt Mary. Her real name was Hazel, right? But nobody ever called her Hazel because it's an awful name. And, I don't know why they didn't call her Aunt Hazel. They just called her Aunt Mary. And so Uncle Jim was married to Aunt Mary. And Uncle Jim was from New Jersey, but he lived in New Orleans. And he was from New Jersey, but he talked real slow. I thought everybody in New Orleans talked like Uncle Jim. That was my impression. But Uncle Jim, Aunt Mary was wonderful. But was my favorite aunt. But she had 14 brothers and sisters. My granddad had 14 brothers and sisters, and Aunt Mary was one of them. And do you know why they had so many brothers and sisters? It was because their mother was hard of hearing. Because when their dad would go to bed, he'd look at her and he'd say, "You want to go to sleep or what?" And she'd go, "What?" Telling you the truth. Right? So Aunt Mary was one of those aunts. Anyway, Uncle Jim was married to Aunt Mary, and I always thought, I had this impression of my Uncle Jim. He was just kind of, I love my Uncle Jim, right? I always thought he was kind of soft, because he was almost borderline effeminate, right? He's just sweet, kind, gentle soul. And that was my impression of Uncle Jim. And that's what I always thought of him growing up until my mom gave me his book. Yeah, Uncle Jim wrote a book. And it was a terrible book. I mean, the misspellings and stuff didn't go together, and it was just all over the place. But I loved my Uncle Jim, so I read this book, and I went, wow. Once I read this book, I realized that my Uncle Jim was a war hero. He was born in New Jersey. In fact, born in New York, as a matter of fact. And when he was a kid, they did a story on him. They called him the Tarzan of Manhattan, because back in Manhattan in the 20s and 30s, they actually had trees and stuff, and his parents would let him run around the woods naked. And so the New York Times did this story on my Uncle Jim, the Tarzan of Manhattan. But when he got to be like 18, 19, 20 years old, he enlisted in the military, like most of the greatest generation did around the World War II times. And he becomes a bomber pilot. And he was a pilot of a bomber who captained several sorties in and out of Nazi Germany. And on this one particular time, one of the last flights, he was due to, cycle home here any day now. He goes into Germany and he gets shot down. The plane is on fire. He gets his crew out of the airplane. They all jump off, but Uncle Jim had to stay with the plane until everybody got off. This is not one of those planes where you just, you pop out of the chute, you pop out of the cockpit, and then you just parachute down, because this was one of those bombers that had props in the back of the plane. So if you got out and you just ejected, you were done. So what you had to do, sir, what you had to do was you blew the canopy, and then you had to shimmy down the fuselage